This is Sustainable Voices, where ideas for a better future speak loud. I'm your host Jasmine, and today we're diving into a topic that feels closer to home than ever: how artificial intelligence is shaping not just the workplace, but also our mental well-being. And let's be real, as students we all felt a mix of excitement and overwhelm that comes with using AI tools like ChatGPT or Consensus. To help me unpack this and share some valuable insights, I'm joined by my co-host Jana. Welcome, Jana.
Thanks, Jasmine. I'm so excited to talk about this. AI is changing the way we live, study and work, but its impact on our mental health and well-being is something we are only starting to explore.
Absolutely. So let's start with the big picture. AI, this buzzword is everywhere, but what does it actually mean when we're talking about it in the context of well-being?
Great question. AI, or artificial intelligence, refers to systems that can perform tasks requiring human-like intelligence. Things like learning, problem-solving, or even creating. But in the context of well-being, it's more than just a tool. It's about how these technologies are shaping the way we manage our mental health and balance the pressures of study or work.
Right, and for today's conversation, we're zooming in on how AI impacts well-being in workplaces and in our academic lives, focusing on jobs that require mental rather than physical labor, like professionals in white-collar industries or students. Thinking of the hours saved with AI summarizing long texts or debugging code. But it also raises important questions. Are we trading creativity for convenience? And what about privacy concerns? When I started my studies in 2020, AI tools weren't really a thing. Fast forward to now, and it's hard to imagine being a student without them. But this rapid shift also means we need to pause and reflect on how these tools are influencing not just our productivity, but also our mental and emotional health.
That's true, and that's why we are talking about it today. AI and well-being are directly relevant to your lives. You're not just using these tools today, you're also preparing for a workforce where understanding how AI impacts mental health will be important. It's not just about technology, it's about building a healthy relationship with technology.
And to help us do that, we're thrilled to welcome Florian. He's an advanced development engineer who spent years creating and implementing AI solutions. While he doesn't specialize in mental health, his insights into AI's real-world applications will give us a fresh perspective on its potential and its challenges. Later, we'll also look into what the future might hold for AI and well-being. So grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and let's dive in. So, Florian, let's start hearing about your work in AI. Could you tell us about your background and any experience where AI and well-being intersected?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you for having me here. So my theoretical background is I've studied automation technology at the University of Stuttgart, where I had a focus on robotics on the one hand and AI on the other hand. And after my studies, I started working as a PhD student in the field of cognitive robotics and smart control. So basically, I tried to come up with robotics ideas where robotics gets smarter and can make choices or solving problems on their own without manual input. And what I tried to accomplish is that roboticists and white-collar workers don't have to calibrate robots or don't have to think about the control of a robotic system, but can focus on the task they want to solve with the robot and not using the robot programming software all the time.
Wow, that's a very broad yet very specific field you have already experienced in. What initially drew you to the field of AI in general and your work specifically, and how has it shaped the way you think about its impact on people?
Actually, my first contact with AI was more of a mistake, actually, because I heard a lecture from a professor at the University of Stuttgart, which I thought would be more about signal processing. But at the end, it was the introduction of AI in his lecture. And I was fascinated about the theoretical background of neural networks, how they function, what's the idea behind it. And the first neural networks we actually wrote on paper. So it's not that it's all computer-based. You could also design a small neural network on your paper without the need of big language models or anything. And that fascinated me because it's actually just math, and it's actually quite simple math. But if you increase the complexity, then it can solve any task you can imagine. And this is very interesting for me.
I can totally understand. I mean, now that we have your background, let's talk about positive potential AI has for especially improving like well-being that we're talking about today. In your experience, what role can AI play in enhancing well-being, specifically at the workplaces in general? We're talking about white-collar work mostly here, but how can it improve that well-being? Are there any particular successes or examples you've seen?
So in my background as a robotics engineer, you have to think that much of the work we're doing is software development. So we have to design the robot platform, we have to implement the robot control, we have to implement how the robot should behave with the human, and everything in this part is software. It's pure software development. And software development is a very repetitive task.
If you talk about like repetitive tasks, it's also very straining on like mental health, probably specifically for software developers if they have to do things over and over again. I imagine also like setting up something new, doing everything all over again is pretty straining. Have you seen AI tools like chatbots or wearables that play a significant role in addressing stress or burnout in the workplace?
Yes, and I think most of you, especially students, can imagine certain ways where you have to do a task which is quite boring or straining to you, but you have to accomplish it. It could be any form of documentation, reporting, or any explanation in form of human readable text. It's something not a lot of people like to do because it's very enduring and a very long-term task to write a huge documentation, for example, like a master thesis. But the information which it contains is quite low, actually. You could write it in like one or two pages, but it will extend for hundreds of pages. And large language models can be greatly used to reduce the stress of writing and doing something you don't like by extending those texts you have to do and enabling you to focus on the information you need to provide. And what I really want to make a point about in this podcast is that the large language models like ChatGPT, for example, they're actually not like a technological breakthrough like the media maybe propagates, but they are filling like exactly this gap of text generation and software generation.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big help for students. I can totally agree, especially ChatGPT. I think a lot of students are already working with it. While AI's potential is pretty exciting, it's also important to address challenges AI can bring. Many people worry about AI increasing feelings of surveillance or techno-stress. Techno-stress is the stress we feel when technology overwhelms us. It's like struggling to keep up with the endless notifications we get, learning new apps, or feeling pressure to always be online. Florian, what strategies have you seen to address these challenges?
Yeah, so in my experience, especially in my studies and in the company, the biggest concerns when you implement AI and roll it out for a broader base of workers is the fear of unemployment. As a large part of your job mostly consists of repetitive, automatable tasks. If you imagine like a mechanical worker or a mechatronics worker, not white collar, blue collar, they have to do tasks which are maybe hard to automate because it's hands-on and you have to be creative. But if you think about engineers and white-collar workers, a lot of jobs they have to do is highly automatable tasks in form of reporting or documentation, as I already pointed out. And they become feared of unemployment because this can be automized. And this is a big challenge we must face when we roll out tools like ChatGPT for our cognitive workforce. And I think my personal feeling about it is that the must-have is that we have an open communication about it. So the companies should quite openly discuss this issue and address the fear of unemployment before we implement the AI. And we have to set boundaries. So AI should not replace like all of those tasks, but we should be very careful when choosing an AI to just choose an AI where the workers are not happy about this kind of work they have to do. And also, as another point, I really want to point out is that I think the techno stress in a company environment can in fact be countered with AI. So, for example, I think any of you already had like some sort of email communication in your work, rather as a student or as a company worker, and you get a ton of emails and notifications which could interrupt you as the workforce. But AI can help to sort them and to summarize them based on their importance. So if you want to have a focusing time, then AI could help by blocking the unnecessary interruptions and only interrupts when critical. So they only point out those notifications which are really critical at that moment, because they can reason what's inside of that. The last point is surveillance, of course. Surveillance, especially in larger companies, is a big fear. And this must be addressed because AI can predict what you're doing or could be used to predict what you're doing and how productive you are. So this must be addressed, and this is often done by company policies. Most bigger companies have those policies against surveillance, not only for AI, but for any form of surveillance. And this should be clearly stated in the for the company when rolling out AI. And also legislative measures are important in that part. And this necessity will be addressed in part by the European AI Act.
If we now look on the other side of the coin, so the employees and people in general, do you think they're becoming more comfortable in sharing data with AI systems? Like what factors influences that trust?
There are AI implementations at the moment, which work more like a collaborative tool. So it's not only you give the AI a task and the AI tries to solve it, but you try to collaborate, you communicate with each other. And with that communication, AI acts more like a friend rather than a tool. There are people or there are tools around where people try to train their dating skills by dating with a artificial intelligence, or they try their speaking skills by speaking in front of an AI. And this creates more like a human-like behavior or human-like relation between the AI and the person in front of it. And because of this human-like behavior and this friend basis, people tend to share more data and more critical data with those AI systems.
So we already had some touches with like real life, real world applications like ChatGPT we all use and love. Let's talk about some other applications. Can you tell us some projects you've seen where like real life applications happened?
So I was very lucky to be one of the beta testers for GitHub Copilot, which in my opinion is a very great tool for any software developer to develop code which they don't want to do because it's some standard forms or interface development. And now I'm working as an advanced development engineer. So now my focus is more on automation and AI. meaning how can we automate certain tools, certain machinery, and bring them out in the field. And in that part, of course, smart robotics plays a significant role. Smart robotics means that robots should learn movements and skill sets on their own. So we, as white-collar workers, we don't need to teach them their movements specifically, but we can teach them like a standard skill set, and the robots can derive their specific skill set on their own, guessing which actions they have to take, and optimize the functionality and interact with the environment dynamically. And the last part I really enjoy working on is getting the training data, because your AI is only as good as your training data. If you have a poor training data, and this was an issue of former large language models before ChatGPT came out, then you get a very poor AI, which acts more machine-like and not human-like.
If we also talk about ChatGPT at the workplace, do you think, I mean, ChatGPT obviously has great improvements, especially over the last few weeks, I kind of feel like, but it sometimes can still feel a bit impersonal. Sometimes it doesn't understand you. It gives you answers that are where you can clearly see, okay, it's a computer behind it. Do you think there's a risk that AI could replace that human connection in the workplace? And how could we avoid that?
Of course, so especially AI co-pilots like ChatGPT, for example, they can eliminate the need of human connection, because they enable the solving of certain tasks which normally contained that you ask, for example, your coworker, or writing some emails to some bosses or supervisors, and AI co-pilots can eliminate all of that. And if you imagine corporate processes, so most corporate processes are designed a certain way so that workers must talk with each other, and people must ask other co-workers, for example, for travel policies. And this results in bonding and strengthening the company identity. And those are very important aspects of company life. And by eliminating those needs, companies risk that this human connection is lost, and that we just talk with AI and don't know our coworkers anymore. And I think companies should counteract that. So that they are very aware of this situation and use AI co-pilots just for the use cases which are not that critical for human connection. And avoid use cases which are very critical.
All right. Looking ahead, how do you think AI will continue to evolve? I mean, we already had it in the past. It took quite some evolving from face recognition to the ChatGPT we know today. In its role as a tool for the workplace and well-being, how will AI continue to evolve?
So in my view, AI will be continuing to be used as a tool to minimize those unnecessary, unproductive tasks. Right now, we have a big wave of large language models coming up, which focus on text segmentation, text sorting, and text generation. But I think the focus, especially in company profiles, will more shift towards the ease up of some emails or document or notifications. I teased it already that many notifications can be summarized and don't even show up at the worker's screen, because AI could read them and could strategically think about ways to counteract those notifications. And I think this part will be a big part of the future of AI. So to avoid those interruptions which the workers get when trying to focus on their real work. And I think this will be the path in the next couple of months.
Have you also maybe seen already some like emerging technologies, what the future might hold for us? Do you have any like I don't know, predictions or things you've heard of, read about, that you're particularly excited about when it comes to AI and maybe specifically mental health, that region?
Yes. When we think about wearables, for example, you can do a ton of cool things with wearables. It might be smartwatches, it might be smart headphones, or even your smartphone, which is in your pocket. And they can detect quite a lot of biofunctions just by their sensors, which are already built in. And there are some early stage stress detection models, which can detect your stress levels way ahead of time. Before you even know you're stressed, they know that you're stressed. And those are based on wearables, which you already use in your everyday life. Or based on behavior analysis, like, for example, how you hit your keyboard or how you move your mouse in your workplace could relate to a certain stress level you have. And I think this could increase your mental health quite a lot, because if you know you're stressed before you know you're stressed, you can counteract it and reduce your stress level to a minimum and increase your well-being.
As we explore the future directions of AI in the workplace, it's pretty clear that ethical and regulatory frameworks will shape how these technologies evolve. We already mentioned the EU AI Act. And from some of these frameworks, we have, for example, the IEEE 7010 standard that focuses on quantifying the well-being impact of AI systems, while the EU AI Act establishes like a legal requirement to ensure that AI is safe. We already had that. And it's not just safe, it's transparent and fair. But this also raises pretty important questions. How do you think these frameworks in general, or the IEEE standard or the EU AI Act, are realistic for developers? Do they pose maybe too many challenges?
The EU AI Act, I always say it could be considered as the GDPR. In Germany, would say the DSGVO of AI. So it's more about data protection. It's more about protecting human rights. And this is a regulatory which is implementable. Of course, it's an overhead, but I think it's a very much needed overhead. And those are rules and regulations which we as AI developers have to take, and we have to bound our AI to be in this EU AI Act, which is good. And to do that, many aspects need to be considered. So, for example, those large language models, one big problem about those large language models is that they are massive. So they are so massive that it's extremely costly to train new large language models. So all of those tools, they are basically relying on one of the four big large language models, which is BERT, Gemini, GPT, and Llama. And each of them costs millions of dollars to train. This is done outside of the EU. So the big issue is, as soon as something is trained outside of the EU AI Act is hard to get into those large language models.
If we get back to the whole mental health, well-being part of things, how do you approach integrating well-being considerations into maybe your work or your previous works, into the systems in general? How do you work on this thought? Well,
of course, well-being should be considered every time you implement an artificial intelligence, because those tools, they are just math. They are just normal algorithms, like any other algorithm. But because they are so powerful and so big, they always bring some changes for the workers. And workers build their own mindset about that. They already have done it in the past. And you have to think about those changes for the workers before you bring out those AIs. So, for example, is it really necessary to bring up this AI and risk that those workers are in fear of unemployment because it's an automatable task which they like to do? or is it something which will be received as a accomplishment and as a good thing? And those thoughts I try to do before I bring out an AI, to avoid that those people might get feared or have negative impact on their well-being.
Thanks. Well, thank you, Florian, for sharing your valuable insights and helping us understand how AI can not only shape the workplace, but also our well-being and mental health. It's fascinating to hear about how ethical frameworks and practical considerations, like you just mentioned, come together in this rapidly evolving field. And I want to thank you for talking to us today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
So that wraps up our conversation with Florian, where we explored the fascinating intersection of AI and well-being in the workplace. Before we sign off, let's reflect on the key takeaways from this episode. Jana, what stood out to you the most?
Oh, for me, it's the way AI can reduce repetitive tasks. Tools like GitHub Copilot or ChatGPT makes tasks like coding or summarizing text so much more efficient, which can really help to reduce mental strain. And for students, applications like Consensus can help in the same way. It helps to find suitable academic literature and summarize it for you.
Absolutely, but on the flip side, we also talked about the challenges AI brings. This fear among workers about job security and among students about how their education might change. Questions like, will we still need to write essays? Or is memorizing knowledge even relevant anymore if AI can provide answers in seconds? Raise big concerns. It makes you wonder if students should focus more on learning how to use AI effectively instead of worrying about traditional methods.
That's right. And privacy concerns are another big issue. The data used to train AI models is often sensitive, and there's always the question of whether that data goes and who has access to it. That's why initiatives like the EU AI Act are so important. They help to address these risks and push for more transparency, which is something everyone should care about, regardless of their profession.
And as we look ahead, the potential for AI to enhance well-being is truly exciting. We discussed how future tools might aim to reduce workplace interruptions, for example by summarizing notifications and emails, to help ease stress. On top of that, technologies like wearables could play a key role in detecting stress early, paving the way for better mental health support and interventions.
Exactly. It's about finding the right balance between embracing what AI has to offer and being mindful of the challenges it brings.
And with that, we want to thank you for joining us today on this episode of Sustainable Voices. Let your voice drive change. If you like this podcast, check out the other episodes.
Take care, everyone.